It is natural to say no. It is not so natural to say yes. No supports survival. Yes does not. Yet in going for higher consciousness, yes is the answer.
Hello, Vishrant. Thank you for coming back to part 2 of our conversation together on the podcast.
Okay.
So last time we spoke about a bunch of your teachings. So we spoke about what Satori is. We spoke about lower consciousness, higher consciousness, and super consciousness. We spoke about maturity and victim-orientated thinking, and then self-acceptance and present moment awareness as well. So I wanted to sort of continue along that vein of just exploring your teachings with you, because I think they're very valuable. One of the things that has been really useful for me over the years is your teaching around totality and discipline and not giving yourself a choice. Particularly for me, I think in business, like it applies to spirituality as well, spiritual practice. But for me, that teaching, I think, gave me a level of confidence in business that I wouldn't have had otherwise. And I don't think without your influence, I would have actually started my own business and gone out on my own. So I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about your understanding of totality and how that applies in life and on the spiritual path.
Okay. There's a recipe in life for success in any endeavor that you do, whether it's athletics or whether it's business or whether it's higher consciousness, whether it's music, whether it's art. And that recipe for success is the same. One of the main ingredients in that recipe is totality. People who are total tend to win. People who are partial tend to fail. Totality is produced when we decide to not give ourselves a choice. When we say we're going to do something and we actually do it. We don't give ourselves a choice. This is what I call discipline, not giving yourself a choice. And I developed that when I was quite young because I could see clearly that if you give yourself a choice, the mind as it is will take the easy way out and shortcut. And in the shortcutting, you decrease your chances of winning at whatever you're doing. And so I became very total in everything I did, and to the degree where I became unstoppable. Nothing could stop me. And that level of totality demands success. Now, when you take that into business, you can succeed really well. When you take it into athletics, you can succeed really well. If you don't take it into higher consciousness, you fail. It's that simple. Because higher consciousness is probably the hardest game of all. Totality rules. Discipline is required for totality, and we're not born with discipline, we have to practice it. My understanding of discipline is so simple. You just give yourself no choice. You decide you're going to do something, you damn well do it. That's it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's clear when you speak that giving yourself no choice would lead to success. How can it lead to anything else? One of the things that I find gets in the way from time to time of me being disciplined is when wounding is coming to the surface. So when I'm feeling sad or anxious or heart pain and it's quite strong, it can be difficult for me to stay clear and stay dedicated to my values in life. So what would your, how important is it to heal the wounds of the heart?
To heal the wounds of the heart, totality is also required because it's uncomfortable. And if we pull the pin because we can't bear the discomfort, that lack of totality pretty much guarantees that we remain wounded. And so in healing the wounds of the heart, once again, totality or discipline is required because it is uncomfortable. And primarily, we're programmed to seek comfort and to avoid pain or avoid discomfort. And so once again, it comes into play. Do we use discipline or do we flake out and find another way to escape our wounding, repress it again, and save it for another day?
So you mentioned that totality is required, and you also mentioned at the end there that repression is not the way to go. So then I'm imagining that the way to go is to allow the wounding to be there and to feel it. I've heard you speak in the past about warm welcoming. Can you describe what you mean when you say warm welcoming?
Yeah. So we can coldly accept something, or we can warmly accept something. If we coldly accept the wounding that's coming to the surface, more than likely we'll find a way to avoid it in the cold acceptance because it's not a complete openness to what's appearing. In a warm welcoming, we are wide open. We're welcoming completely whatever's appearing, whatever's coming up, and in that we heal it. But only in that, really. A cold welcoming wouldn't work. It has to be a warm welcoming. And it's a little unusual to warmly welcome discomfort, but it depends a great deal on how much do you want to heal the wounds of your heart. Because if you are wounded, you're going to probably be manipulated by trying to not feel the wounding by different people and different circumstances. And if you're into higher consciousness, you don't want to be contracting every time your wounding gets touched. You want to be open because in that openness, you can perceive love. If we're contracted, if we're in resistance because our wounding's being touched, we lose contact with love. We lose contact with heart because heart appears in openness, not in closure, not in defendedness, but in openness.
Yeah, and that I can feel that openness in you now, and it's really beautiful. One of the ways you describe that openness is often the way Lao Tzu used to describe it in terms of yin and yang. And you will talk about being yin, but also being in the world. And that seems really difficult to me as a practice because intuitively being yang in the world seems easier. Can you describe what you mean by yin and yang, and how would one practice yin?
Okay. So when we're yang, there's no outward go. There's nothing but outward going energy. It's like a solidness, a firmness, and it's got closure in it. It's got stuckness in it to some degree. It's got force in it to some degree. With yin, you're just receptive. You're just wide open, receiving. And it's only really in yin that we get to see things clearly. We don't see much clearly when we're in yang because we're closed to start with. The beauty of yin is you can raise your consciousness levels in it. In yang, you probably can't. But we need a little bit of yang in the world to make things happen. The idea in Taoism is to stay yin and then move to yang when you need to for a little bit and then back to yin. So you actually live as yin rather than yang. Yet most human adults in the world live as yang. They might find a little yin every now and again, but they live as yang. They live as this closed, outgoing force, which is for survival. There's nothing actually wrong with it. It's for survival. But if you're into higher consciousness, you've got to move towards yin. You've got to move towards surrender and acceptance, letting go, rather than actually demanding, being forceful, my way. You know? So yin is very, very beautiful. It's very soft. It's very feminine, whereas yang is more masculine. Yet when we get to meet people in the world, I don't meet anyone who's yin. I meet women who are yang, and I meet men who are yang, because this is natural for defensiveness. This is natural for survival. It is natural to say no. It is not so natural to say yes. No supports survival. Yes does not. Yet in going for higher consciousness, yes is the answer. And it's up to you. You're going to create your reality by the way you think and by your actions and your words. If we're going for higher consciousness, we need to find a way to support yin, which means opening wide up and staying open wide up, which means being vulnerable in the world, which is against survival. And so it's not actually natural for people to raise their consciousness levels. It's natural for people to stay locked in lower consciousness until they die. Someone who's raised their consciousness levels has, in a way, defeated the survival mechanism. If you've become yin, you've defeated the survival mechanism. Now, when it comes to meeting enlightened people, enlightened teachers, you'll find they all have one thing in common. They are all wide open. You won't meet a closed, awake person, ever. My bet is they were like that before awakening, and that's what supported awakening. Yet people miss that. They just go, 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 using force, using yang, thinking somehow they're going to get somewhere. Well, in the material world, yeah, that works. But in the spiritual world, or the world of higher consciousness, that simply doesn't work. It's the wrong direction. Yin works, being wide open. And in that openness, you perceive love.
Yeah, that's beautiful. The perception of love in that yin space. Yeah, when I touch into it, it's such a nice place to be. You often talk about being in service to heart, and you will talk about being in service to heart even if a seeker isn't necessarily experiencing love in that moment, but knowing what heart does to the mind and being in service to that regardless.
Yeah.
How does serving heart assist a seeker to develop higher consciousness?
In service of heart, to perceive unconditional love, you have to be wide open. To raise your consciousness levels, you have to be wide open. All closures keep us locked in lower consciousness. All defense systems keep us locked in lower consciousness. And so in that openness, we find heart, and it's beautiful. And then it's up to you. What are you going to serve? And so in service of heart, you develop certain habits or patterns that usually involve taking care of the planet or animals or people, something besides yourself. Because when you're experiencing love, unconditional love, you just want to take care of everything. It's just how it affects you. And then it's up to you how you live your life. So I consciously chose to serve heart, and then consciously changed my patterns to support that. And that took fair bit, because I was a bit of a war machine as a business person, and I had to change my patterns to be in service of heart. But I just couldn't see any way I wanted to live on this planet any longer if I wasn't experiencing love. Because to me, love is heaven. And lower consciousness, where people resist life and contract against life, is hell. And so the choice, heaven or hell. I chose heaven.
Yeah, it's pretty clear when you put it like that, heaven or hell. It seems like an obvious choice. You were speaking earlier about, well, I asked you about totality in business, and you were talking about totality in business. And one of the other areas where I feel like you've helped me a lot in my time with you is in relationship. I feel like I'm probably a better partner to my wife now than I was before I met you, and it's a nicer relationship to be in for both of us, and more mutually supportive. And when I hear you speak about relationship, you often talk about being in service to the other and lifting the other towards what they are going for in life, and not looking to see what you can get or take from the relationship. So I see that as quite an ideal that I'd like to shoot for. I don't always succeed at it. I fail a lot, but I'm interested in your views on relationship and how a seeker can be in relationship in the most beautiful way possible.
Okay. One of the problems that seekers have, and it's a worldwide problem, is they are going for something that most people aren't going for. They're going for higher consciousness. Most people are going for survival, money, food, houses, cars, sex. Someone who's into higher consciousness is going for truth. Someone who's in higher consciousness is going for heart. And it's a very, very different way of being in the world, because it's not what we were programmed to do. We were programmed at school and university to be efficient little machines. And that works in making money and being successful in the world, but it definitely doesn't work in higher consciousness or in the pursuit of love. And as I was saying, love to me is heaven. So you have to change your patterning somewhat. And that's up to you. You've got to go inside yourself and have a look at how you're programmed. And you do that by starting to witness your own mind with a silent witness that doesn't judge the mind. And it starts to show itself to you. It starts to show you how tricky it is, how it will even lie to you to get what it wants. Because you're witnessing it, though, you get detachment from the mind and you start to see it more clearly, what it's actually up to. Now your consciousness levels are going up, because now you're not just caught in dream, you're witnessing the mind. You have detachment from it. And then you start to see the obstacles that are in the way of heart, the obstacles that are in the way of truth. And because you can see these obstacles, you can now start to remove them. Until you see them, you can't remove them. The problem comes that if you're into this form of growth, the people you hang out with probably need to be as well. Because it's very difficult for people who aren't into higher consciousness to understand people who are. It seems weird to them because they're still caught in survival and someone's trying to go beyond survival. And so they won't understand it. They understand the material world, which we've all been trained to understand, of collecting, accumulating more and more and more and more, surviving. High consciousness is way beyond that. And so seekers are very misunderstood. They are also quite rare. And it's best for them if they hang out with other seekers going in the same direction as them. That actually works. Being with someone who is not going in the same direction is probably going to cause conflict sooner or later. Someone who's going in the same direction will support you in going in that direction. Someone who's not going in the same direction won't want you to change because they've already pigeonholed you and they feel safe with the way you are. And if you're into higher consciousness, you're definitely going to change, which makes them feel uncomfortable about what you're into and will try to bring you back. So it's highly unlikely you'll get support from someone who's not into higher consciousness if you're going for it. And this is just the way it is.
Yeah, I see the truth in that. It's quite a confronting reality for some seekers because that's where they find themselves. But I do see the truth in it.
You know, I had a tragedy over that one. Back in the 80s, I was engaged to be married to a lovely lady, a beautiful lady. And I was into truth and she was not.
Mm.
And so she gave me an ultimatum. She said, you need to leave what you're doing or I'm going to leave. So she left because I was way past the point of no return. I was into truth big time. I was into heart big time. And it did break my heart that that relationship failed. And I'm sure it broke her heart as well. But this was an example to me of someone in relationship with someone who's not into truth when I was. And it taught me a lesson. I've hung out with truth seekers since.
Yeah. You've mentioned the word openness a lot as we've been speaking today. And I remember when I first came to your satsangs and hearing the word openness, I didn't know what it meant. I didn't have any background of spirituality and I didn't have any context for enlightenment at all. And I had to ask you a few times what openness meant and try to get a sense of it inside myself. Can you describe, when you use the word openness, can you describe what you mean by that word?
Yeah. So for me, openness means that I am wide open all the time. There's no defense systems in play. There's no resistance happening. There's no contractions happening. I'm just wide open. Now, if someone attacks me, I remain wide open. I don't close. If I actually have a go at someone, I don't close. I remain wide open. Because when you close, or when I close, it cuts me off from the perception of love. And I'm not prepared to betray love. So I refuse to close for any reason. I remain wide open. All things that would have closed me, all belief systems with expectations on them when not met that would close me, have actually been removed. I remain wide open. And this is very beautiful because I'm perceiving love pretty much all the time. And it's like being in heaven all the time.
Yeah, you put that so simply, that openness is just a lack of defenses. I feel like, yeah, it's a really simple teaching, but it has such depth and it has such power when it's fully examined and fully implemented, because yeah, you have to remain open, you have to undo belief systems, you have to drop defenses, you have to do a lot of work on your mind in order to support that. And so it's so simple when you speak about it, but to me it's the most important teaching that you have, and you put it on all of your sannyasins certificates. Openness counts for everything. And I love that sentence because it's, you know, it's 4 words, but it's so profound.
Yeah. Yeah, well, the thing that's lacking in this world is love. People think they perceive love, but quite often what they're perceiving is primal bonding, which happens when you are in a relationship with someone, or when you have children, or you with your parents, or your brothers and sisters, or with your close friends. You have this primal bonding, which makes you feel love, but in it is this attachment, and in it, jealousy appears. Now, in real unconditional love, there is no jealousy, there is no attachment to anything. Love has one quality and one quality alone. It loves. That's it. It doesn't have another quality. But primal bonding has all these survival mechanisms in it because it is a survival program. And quite often we feel those feelings that we have towards people, and we mistake those feelings for love, but really it's just primal bonding. There can be unconditional love in primal bonding, but you need to be able to see the difference. Unconditional love is the most beautiful thing a human being can experience, and it has no attachments. It doesn't do anything, it just loves.
Yeah, very beautiful. So I wanted to change tack now for a moment. I wanted to ask a few challenging questions of you. And you love challenges, so this will be fun. So I want to put these in a respectful way and open up dialogue rather than close it down. And yeah, we'll see how we go. And I'm also aware that, you know, in challenging you, I'm probably saying just as much about myself as I am about you. But I do feel like it's important. So in your teaching style, you'll often use discontentment as a motivator for your seekers. And I don't like that. I struggle with that. And it's difficult for me to get my head around how discontentment can be used consciously by a teacher in order to allow a seeker to develop further. So my curiosity is in, what are your reasons for using discontentment in that way, and how do you see it facilitating growth for your students?
Okay. So, unless we're discontented or unhappy with something, why would we change? It is only when we're motivated to change that we move to change. And in going for higher consciousness, there is a lot of change that is required. Now, if you're happy with everything as it is, why would you move to change? The main motivator for change is discontentment. It's probably the only motivator. Have a look and see what motivates you to change anything. So discontentment makes people feel unhappy, but without that motivator, what changes?
I also see motivators can be, the love of truth, the love of heart, the desire, the natural desire in human beings to grow and evolve. I think that's inherent. And I do see discontentment as one possible motivator, but I don't see it as the only one. And my personal experience of that discontentment is that it can create a self-loathing in me and a culture in which sometimes it can be seen as advanced to beat up on yourself publicly, because you're then demonstrating a depth of seeing. I'm failing at this, I'm failing at that, and it can be seen as spiritually advanced to notice these things. But I can also see that there can be a trap of getting stuck in that place where you take on this role of inner critic for yourself and never emerge from that.
Yeah, well, because you actually have been a student of mine, you would know that I don't support people running guilt on themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I don't support people in any way beating themselves up.
Mm-hmm.
You'd also have heard many, many times that we need to become our own best friend. And we do. And you would have also heard many, many times that we need to accept whatever we find in ourselves. And everything always begins with acceptance. But my understanding of trying to motivate people is there's only two ways: reward and detriment. You're going to get something that you want, or you're going to get away from something you don't want. And so, in making people discontent with where they're at, you're motivating them towards freedom. And that works, it seems to work better than actually painting beautiful pictures of higher consciousness, beautiful pictures of love, beautiful pictures of enlightenment. They don't seem to work anywhere near as much as people wanting to change their position because they're finding it's uncomfortable. And so you've got to look at how humans operate. What works, what doesn't work. There's no point teaching something that doesn't work. It's so funny that we train dogs the same way, reward and detriment. We actually train children the same way, reward and detriment. There is another motivator, but not very many people are in touch with it. And that other motivator is unconditional love.
Mm.
And that motivates you to want to take care of everyone and everything. But that's a motivator that people usually only discover in higher consciousness. How do you get to higher consciousness to find that motivator? If everyone's feeling content with what is, they're not going to change. Now, if people are feeling discontent with what is, now they're motivated to change. It's so simple. Everyone wants to be comfortable, though, because that's what we're primarily programmed for. Unfortunately, if all we do is settle for comfort, we might as well smoke joints, drink alcohol, watch television on a comfortable lounge. But that won't raise our consciousness levels, but it will probably be comfortable.
Sounds okay.
Yeah. Oh, you got to look at what you want.
Do you see there being a limit to discontentment as a motivator, as in it will take you so far, but not all the way?
Well, that's absolutely true. Discontent will only take you so far. It is only the love of truth or the love of heart itself that takes you further. But to get to the love of truth, to get to the love of heart, you have to open right up. And what's going to motivate you to open right up? Because the defenses that you carry protect you from feeling things. What's going to motivate you to take those defenses down? I would say discontentment with what is. Just a blind guess, you know.
I would also say that seeing that living in an open way is actually a nicer way of being in the world. It is more beautiful. There's more flow. There's more connection and intimacy with people. So there are a lot of positives to being open, as well as the difficulties of having to experience the pain that you've repressed.
And how many people do you know who live like that?
Not many.
How many?
Does this include people that I've seen on YouTube? Or just people that I've met in person?
The problem with people you meet on YouTube is
Yeah.
they could be faking it.
That's true, they could
To
be.
really know if someone lives openness, lives the way of the heart, you have to spend a lot of time with them personally, because lots of people can fake it. The real deal doesn't fake it. The real deal is like that all the time. How many people do you know who live like that?
Yeah, I'd say one. I'd say you're the person that I know in terms of people that I've met in my lifetime physically that embodies openness in the clearest, strongest way.
So I got to be that open by being motivated to remove all obstacles that were in the way of openness, because all obstacles were in the way of heart. Now, I was discontent with the way I was living because I was programmed to be an efficient little machine like everyone else, and I was discontent with that. It was that discontentment that motivated me to move to change. Nothing else, really. Not until the top end. But up to near the top end, it was discontentment that motivated me to undo all my belief systems that were in the way of heart.
So so let me just push back on that a little bit, because the way, you know, there were a few key points in your story. One was when you were 19 and you were trying to get the money back for your girlfriend for an encounter group, and you ended up attending the group, and you fell in love with encounter because you saw it as a challenge to your ego, and it was, you know, it was alive and there was lots happening, and you really enjoyed that encounter style. And then, you know, you were hanging around focal and alpha level training and this, and you ended up building a publishing empire. And it wasn't until you were 28 came into contact with Osho that heart became something important to you. And then my understanding is your main motivator was the satoris that you'd had, and the heart awakening experiences that you'd had, and the wanting to embody those things more and more in your life, as opposed to necessarily any one teacher in any one encounter group showing you things that you might not like about yourself. There were other motivators in your life other than discontentment.
So the main motivator for me wanting to heal the wounds of my heart when I was in my 20s was I didn't want to be manipulated by women using the wounds of my heart to control me. I was dissatisfied with that idea.
Mm-hmm.
And I discovered that most women I went out with wanted to try to manipulate and control me with my wounding. Abandonment wounding, betrayal wounding, injustice wounding, you name it. And I decided I didn't want to be wounded. I got very discontent with that idea. And that's what motivated me to heal my wounding. Discontentment.
Would you say that your satoris and your heart awakenings motivated you also?
So Satori's motivated me to give my life to God, because all of a sudden I knew what God was. It wasn't an idea anymore. It wasn't a concept anymore. It was my own direct experience.
Mm.
And I did, but I failed because I didn't have a teacher available at the time. I was with Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh or Osho at that time, and you couldn't just have a chat with him. He was too damn big. And so I failed. I tried for 4 years and failed. And so then I became quite depressed over the whole affair. And once again, depression is not a nice thing. And realized that there wasn't much worth doing here. This is a plane where people suffer until they die, living in hope that somehow it'll get better later, but hope's not real. So I had trouble with purpose of life and meaning of life because I couldn't find any. And that's when I decided that, well, if I'm going to be here, I want to experience love. And so I was motivated by the discontentment of what I was feeling to move to service of heart. And so instead of putting truth first, I put heart first. And in putting heart first, you have to practice openness, because openness supports heart. Nothing else does. Mm-hmm. And so once again, I was motivated by discontentment.
Very nice. You brought that around very nicely. So one of the things that you often say, that I'll hear you say, is that you are not the body, you are not the mind, you are, the vastness of the universe, the emptiness. And I'm familiar with that, that teaching in Advaita Vedanta and lots of other traditions of we are really actually the emptiness. That is our true self. And this body mind is just an experience. But in doing that, you'll often discount the human aspects of yourself. You will emphasize the beingness that you clearly have strong access to, and de-emphasize the human. And I don't like that aspect of the way you teach, because I feel like it makes you more difficult to relate to. And it also makes it feel to me like enlightenment is an unachievable goal, because I need to not be human to be enlightened. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. you can't actually meet me where I exist, because I exist as the universe, as nothing, as everything, gone, 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 silence and stillness. And so I haven't experienced myself as human for 24 years because I'm not the body, I'm not the mind. I am this pure awareness that is everywhere. Now, if you were that, if you were knowing that you were that pure awareness everywhere and you are not associated with the mind or the body anymore, you would not be human either. And you would not think of yourself as human because you're beingness and you know it every moment. And so I pretend to be human to talk to you, but there's nothing human about me. I left this body as an I 24 years ago. Enlightenment is freedom from the mind, because the mind itself is a prison, the bars of which are made of fear. I've been free for 24 years, but I'm not human. You want me to be human so you can somehow think I'm like you, but I'm not. I haven't suffered in 24 years. I haven't experienced fear in 24 years. I am free. My mind, this mind, rests in beingness, profoundly content for no reason, in Sahaja Samadhi. Now, I'm trying to help you get to this place where you find out what you really are. And when you discover what you really are, you won't be able to say you're human anymore, because you're not. You're not the body, you're not the mind. It's an avatar. That's it. And so I am sorry that it makes you feel unhappy that your spiritual guru is not human. But what the heck do you think enlightenment is?
So when I've asked you similar questions in the past, one way you described it to me, which really helped me, was you pointed to a fly screen on a window, and there was a piece of dust, tiny little piece of dust on the fly screen. And you said, everything that you see in this room that you can experience, all the sounds, all the sights, all the people, are this speck of dust. And the rest of the fly screen is the vastness of the universe and pure awareness. And that's what I'm resting as. And so even if there is some awareness in the body and out here, in perspective, the dust is very, very small and the fly screen is very, very large. So that made a lot of sense to me, because if I experienced myself as 99% awareness and 1% human, I would also speak in those terms. But what I wonder is, as opposed to saying I'm not the mind or I'm not the body, would it be more accurate to say I am not only the mind and I'm not only the body, because there's so much more to what I am?
Okay. So someone who's ego-based is identified with being a body. I'm not identified with anything.
Yes.
I'm free.
Yes.
And so I'm not the body. I am not the mind. I'm not identified with it. I'm free. But I'm trying to talk to someone who is identified with the body, who thinks that everybody is the same. We are the same, but we're not human. We are pure beingness, and we cannot be anything else. We are already at our final destination. It's just that most humans are not aware of what they really are. So they don't exist as what they really are. They exist as this human body and mind that suffers until it dies. So sad. And so, because love is here, love has motivated my mind to be in service to those who are still lost, to help try them to get free. I don't have another reason to be here. That's it. Bottom line.
Yeah. No, I feel that in you, and I do know that that is your only reason for being here, is to help people get free. And I do admire that a great deal. And it may be just semantics that I'm nitpicking here, but it's yeah, it's difficult, I think, to grasp. I think one of the difficulties is it sounds like the language that you're using is setting up a duality, in that you are the awareness, but you are not the mind. Whereas if you're all of the universe, then surely that includes the body and mind as well. Like you are everything. Does that make sense? Setting up a duality as opposed to the non-dual.
Only if you're living as an identity would that be the case. I'm not living or existing as an identity. It is not the case. I am experiencing self as everything, which is actually the definition of God.
Mm. Mm.
But it's not just me, it's everybody is that. I am that, but so are you. The confusion comes because you still think you're a somebody that's going somewhere, that's been somewhere. Take away that dream, because that is a dream, it's not real. Who are you really?
Mm.
A better question is, what are you really? Because there is no who.
Yeah, that question silences my mind. And I've experienced myself as nothingness in your presence before, many times. So yeah, without the story, it's nice.
It isn't it?
Mm. Um, okay, so one other thing that I had was that often you will ask your students to trust you, and I understand the necessity behind that, the trusting. But you will also ask for them to look beyond your personality and tune into the beingness beyond that. And I myself have attempted to practice that teaching, because I've received that teaching from you multiple times, of trusting in you and tuning into the beingness beneath your personality. And it works
That,
temporarily. Yeah.
that's incorrect. That's incorrect, though.
Okay, can you correct me, please?
Yeah, there's a Buddha field here, which is being produced by awareness continuously being aware of itself. I ask people to tune into that.
Okay.
And that is a doorway into your own true self.
Mm-hmm.
Now, to step into the doorway, you've got to trust me, because you're going into the unknown. And the mind doesn't like going into the unknown. It throws up fear to defend itself. But if you trust me, you might step into that unknown and find yourself as truth and be free. All awake people are doorways. They're all black holes. Everything's pouring into them. you step into that and you can find yourself as truth. It's not personal. There's actually no such thing as personal.
Okay. So that makes total sense in respect of the spiritual path and finding beingness. In terms of practical everyday matters, like, for example, finances. I would have lots of conversations with you about finances, and it's not a spiritual subject. It's a practical subject that needs practical solutions. And your response to me in that regard was often to trust. And I used to find it very difficult to trust in regard to practical matters because I saw them as very separate to my relationship with my spiritual teacher. I saw it much more as an employee-boss relationship in a company, for example, more akin to that relationship. So can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. You've got to look at what my intention is in being here. And then you'll understand that everything I do is to help people get free. But I can't be explaining everything I do all the time because I'm seeing a very big picture. I'm not caught in any small picture whatsoever. I'm seeing a very big picture of what's the best way to create this vehicle for higher consciousness for everybody concerned. To some degree, you live in a small picture of your life, your problems, what's happening in front of you. I'm taking the whole world in. I'm trying to create a vehicle for higher consciousness that will help everybody. And I can't really be explaining every detail that I get involved in. And so you have to look at what is my intention for doing what I do. What am I up to? Why am I here? Is it clean or is it not?
Yeah, it's clean. It feels clean to me. So bringing it back to that bigger picture and back to the intention puts the finances in a context that is as I'm feeling into it now, it feels like the finances are a very small picture and they're not as important as what's going on around the vehicle for higher consciousness and what that vehicle is being set up for. Thank you for that clarification. I appreciate that.
Well, you have been quite a big part in helping me set up the vehicle for higher consciousness. Buddhism and the different Buddhist sects are all vehicles for higher consciousness. I've tried to create one that is absolutely pragmatic. No smells or bells, just what works. And so I don't even like the idea of religion because it's got such a dirty name. I don't like being called a spiritual teacher because that has a dirty name. I see myself as an absolute realist teaching reality in a world that is dreaming.
Yeah, yeah, and I see that as very valuable. So one other challenging question that I had for you, and this is the last of the challenging questions.
I doubt it. I doubt that.
For today, I need to caveat that it's the last of the challenging questions for today.
See, I have an understanding that if someone is awake and they can't handle challenging questions, they're not awake.
Yeah, I appreciate that understanding. I appreciate your openness in responding to my challenges and your willingness to allow me to challenge you in that way. It fosters a sense of trust, and it fosters a sense of respect. Actually, I feel a lot of respect for you in answering my questions. So thank you for that. So you have been teaching you for 24 years now. You woke up in 99, and since that time, Isaac Shapiro asked you to come out of meditation. You're in meditation for 6 months after enlightenment, and he asked you to come out and share what you'd found. And your spiritual father, Osho, had died in 1990. So often spiritual teachers will have a lineage. They will have a line of teachers that have gone back generations that they have been taught by, and that they attempt to honor their teachings. Your spiritual father was dead when you woke up, Osho. And Isaac and you had a falling out at some stage, and so the teacher that you woke up with, you were also not really close to. And so you've been isolated as a teacher for these 24 years. It's been you setting up, the vehicle for high consciousness and holding satsang, but you haven't necessarily had any mentor or any guide in doing that. And you talk quite openly about, experimenting with different things and trying different things, because there is no manual to being an enlightened guru. For me, at times, that can feel challenging because if we have a dispute, you and I, there's no one that I can go to as like a mediator or a dispute resolution process or anything, because there is no authority other than you. And so sometimes that can feel okay, like it doesn't even register as a thing to me. There's a trust in a kind of benevolent dictatorship, but at other times that can feel really threatening. And obviously, when I'm triggered or when there's wounding at the surface, that's very challenging for me. So I wanted to ask you about that. Do you see lineages as important, and do you see spiritual teachers having peers, like other awake teachers that they can speak to, as useful?
It would have been helpful, but it also would have limited me with the superstitions of the past. All lineages are probably religions, and they're full of smells and bells and a whole pile of rules and regulations that were made a long time ago and may or may not be appropriate today. And so in not having a lineage, I wasn't burdened with that. And so I could do whatever I wanted. And so I looked at everything from an absolutely pragmatic position, because that's what my mind is like, very pragmatic, and worked out what would work and what wouldn't work. Having someone above me, how can that possibly be? I am everything. To have someone above me would be an indication that I was not awake, that that didn't happen. How can there ever be something greater than knowing yourself as that? That is everything.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. When you say having someone above you would not make sense, but for example, psychotherapists, uh, in order to keep their license, they need at least 10 hours of supervision per year. And that supervision doesn't need to be with someone that has more experience than them. They might have 50 years of practicing psychotherapy, and they could be doing supervision with someone who has 5 years or 10 years. So I'm not necessarily saying there needs to be someone above you, but there could be someone at your level that you can speak to, that may serve as a useful sounding board to you, because I know that you value sounding boards, but you're often using students as sounding boards. And when you don't have students that are capable of serving as really clear sounding boards, that can be difficult.
That was a statement.
Yeah. Do you would you see any value in having someone as your peer in just to be able to use as a sounding board?
Whenever I meet someone else who's awake, there is absolutely nothing to say. The silence is so profound, anything but that would be noise. You live in the mind to some degree. I do not. I live as being this. Well, it's existing as being this. My mind went silent 24 years ago. I don't have anything to say to someone else who's awake. And I really don't have any interest in their opinion. I love them as I love everybody. But I just don't live in the head. I don't have an interest in thinking. My mind loves the silence and stillness of beingness. You're still projecting onto me that I'm something like a psychotherapist or a psychologist. Boy, oh boy, am I not. Gone, gone, gone beyond, not coming back.
So one other observation around that, you mentioned that when you speak to enlightened people, there's really nothing to say. It's just profound silence. When you spoke to Ted Strauss, I arranged an interview, not an interview, it wasn't an interview, it was just a conversation. I arranged for you to have a conversation with Ted Strauss, and you guys hit it off. Like, you spoke for an hour about lots of different subjects, and to me, it was a really nice conversation to just witness. And you had a lot of commonalities, different language, different terms that you use, but you had a lot of commonalities in the way you teach. And it seemed to me, again, my projections and my sort of guesses, but it seemed to me like Ted got value out of that conversation, and it also seemed to me like you got value out of that conversation. And it wasn't just silence meeting silence. There was lots of words.
Yeah, but you've got to look for my agenda. Why would I talk to him publicly? Who would that be for?
For your students.
And all his students too.
Yeah.
I wasn't talking for me. I wasn't interested in talking to Ted for me. It was for all the people who are listening who may have got a gaining of high consciousness as a result. And so, yes, I talk every day because I hold satsang every day to people who aren't awake, so they have a chance of freedom. And talking to Ted was just another opportunity to do that worldwide.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. That makes sense to me. Okay. So last question then, because I know you have some people there that you're hosting, and I want to allow you to get back to looking after them. I'm about to become a father. My wife's pregnant, 36 weeks pregnant now. And there's a sense of trepidation in me about some aspects of being a father. There's also a sense of excitement and anticipation. And a sense of wanting to be the best father that I can for my son when he's born. And my question is, how can I integrate being a really present, loving father for my son, and also being a spiritual seeker that wants to continue his search for truth?
So a better question would have been, how did I do it?
That's your opinion, that's a better question. I like my question.
Well, my children were very, very young when awakening occurred.
Yeah.
1 year old, I think, and 3 years old, something like that. Or 4 years old. It's hard to remember back.
Okay, so let me ask you this question. When Genevieve was born, that must have been around 95 or 96?
Yeah.
When Genevieve was born, or just before she was born, did you feel like that was going to take you away from your search for truth?
Heck no. Why would it take me away from my seeking of truth? You see, in seeking truth, you raise your consciousness levels. You can see a way bigger picture than anyone else when you have higher consciousness levels. Is that better for my children or worse for my children?
Better, clearly better.
Indeed. That's how I saw it too. Would you rather have a dad who was awake or a dad who was asleep?
So you don't see it as a problem for me. You don't see it as an issue at all.
I don't see it as a problem at all. I practiced the practices I had when my children were born was the practice of openness. Nobody knew I was practicing openness, but it's a spiritual practice. I was practicing it all the time, but nobody knew. I was also practicing present moment awareness. always being present to what is real. But nobody knew. Nobody knew I was practicing meditation all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And when I ran into the Advaita Vedanta teachers, which was a little bit later, I was practicing self-inquiry. Nobody knew,
Mm-hmm.
but that's what I was practicing.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have a big sign on me, spiritual seeker in meditation, but that's what I was practicing the whole time. I was practicing while taking care of my family, while taking care of my children, while taking care of my friends, because that was the way of the heart, while taking care of my clients.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anything else?
No, I just want to express my gratitude for you and my love for you, Vishrant. Thank you for giving me this time, and yeah, I really, really appreciate it. Really value you. Thank you so much.
If when this is finished, you shut your eyes and go in, it'll be very easy because your mind is just about gone.
It is just so gone. Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I love it. I love it. I love it.